Constitution of India and Schedule 7 has the lists, 3 lists which say that which is the legislature which can make law on that area, whether it is the central parliament or it's the state legislature which can make law. Okay. Now I'm going to quickly flash again on the screen the relevant areas. So we have the union list where it says regulation of labor and safety in mines and oil fields. Okay. Schedule 7 has 3 lists. The first list, which is the union list, only the central legislature can make laws on this aspect, not the central government, the legislature, the parliament. So regulation of labor and safety in mines and oil fields. Okay. So here you will not find state laws. Okay. However, all the other areas are in the concurrent list. Trade unions, industrial and labor disputes, social security and social insurance, employment and unemployment, welfare of labor, provident funds, employers' liability, workmen's compensation, pensions, maternity benefit, education, including technical education. So the vocational and technical training of labor, this is the part that you need to look at, and factories. What does this mean? If it is in the concurrent list, then both the central legislature and the state legislature can make laws. Now, what does that mean for your practice? So there are many central level acts like Factories Act, for example, which was made in 1948. Okay. And it hasn't been replaced by state level act, but state level rules may be there. Okay. Now you need to look at, whenever you look at in any state, some of you may be in organizations which have offices in multiple states. Now the question then you have to look at is, okay, you know the Factories Act is here, but is there a state level act or rules that have been applied in my state or not? Now how we will go about in this course is that we will look at any uniformly applicable central law. In many cases, the states have not modified the act, but they have either have their own rules or they may not have done even that. Okay. So what you will look at when you study each part is that what is the law, one which is generally applicable by default in case of no special state law. Second, if a state has actually passed an act on that matter with respect to that state. Okay. So that's the practice we will have for each of you, and you can look at every time you can look at and research at whether there is a state level law applicable in your state. Okay. So that's the reason why you, now in some cases like Provident Funds related law, we are following the Provident Funds Act of 1952. Okay. We may have special kinds of subordinate legislation, which is rules and regulations, but the parent act is pretty standard. Like we don't usually have modified rules. Okay. Modified acts. Now, that's the first principle. Every time, whenever you have to look at this, you have to look at, is this a concurrent list matter or is this a union list matter? Okay. We did not find in the state list entries pertaining to labor law related matters, which means that there is no area which is exclusively within the domain of state government. That actually makes your life harder, not easier, because if everything is in a concurrent list, it means there may be overlapping central and state legislation. So central legislations on these matters have been there from either pre-constitutional era before 1950 or before 1947, or like Workmen's Compensation Act was before 1947. Then Industrial Disputes Act is 1948, right? And on the other hand, you may have certain legislations which are post 1950. Okay, but if there is a subsequent state legislation, then you know that the state legislation holds the field in that case. Okay, so you'll have to do a quick research and find that out. The second aspect I wanted you all to be aware of in this class is these two legislations which are going to be your superpower when you advise clients, which is the labor laws exemption from furnishing returns and maintaining registers by certain establishments act. This is of 1988 and it was amended in 2014. Okay. Life was made a lot better after the 2014 amendment. And the second law is the simplified registers under ease of compliance to maintain registers under various labor laws rules. Okay. Now, this was in 2017, which means it's last year's. So both of these laws actually enable you to have a very simplified compliance framework. Now you can even look at the Factories Act and see that is my requirement for registration and compliance reduced as per Factories Act through any of these laws. So we'll put the links to these laws inside the course materials tomorrow. But in the meanwhile, I want to take you through these nevertheless. Okay. So this is the 1988 Act. Now this Act states that you are exempted if you maintain registers under this Act. Okay. And you furnish returns as per Form A. So there are about 5 or 6 registers that you have to maintain under this Act, and you have to furnish returns in Form A. To whom is this applicable? This is applicable to entities which are very small establishments, which means you have not more than 9 people in the previous 12 months. And then small establishments, which mean you have between 10 to 19 people. Now this part has been amended to mean 10 to 40 people. This is the amendment, 2014 amendment. Okay. So I'll show you the amended part. This is the amendment which says that between 10 to 40 people, the 19 word has been substituted with 40. So if there are up to 40 people, then you can comply with this law, and your requirement to maintain registers under certain laws is not there anymore. Which are the laws you don't have to maintain registers of? All laws which are listed in the schedule. This is in the first schedule. We will take you to the first schedule, so you can see which laws you are exempted from. Okay. There are 9 laws, and if you see here, Factories Act is also there. Okay, so the whole rigmarole of maintaining registers under Factories Act gets simplified by maintaining registers and complying under this act. So let's look at these laws: Payment of Wages Act, Minimum Wages Act, Weekly Holidays Act, Factories Act. These will be uniformly applicable to most establishments. Plantation Labor Act and Journalists Act is a special law, 2 special sectors. Sales Promotion Employees Act is again a special law, so leave that out, right? But 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, and 7 and 9. Contract Labor Act is a general law. Most people prefer to hire contract labor so that they don't have to have the formality of engaging labor for a fixed period of time, and they are free to terminate the labor anytime, and they don't have to give PF and other benefits. They want to hire contract labor. So you're exempted from several specific compliance requirements under this act, and Equal Remuneration Act. Okay, so one thing I want to clarify here is that you are exempted from a requirement of maintaining registers and furnishing returns if you maintain them as per this act. But that does not mean that the provisions of these acts don't apply. For example, the Equal Remuneration Act says that you cannot discriminate between men and women when you remunerate them, or there are other criteria also, people on other criteria, basis of caste, this, that, there are many criteria. Okay, as long as someone is fit for the job and similarly qualified for the job, then you cannot discriminate in the remuneration you pay to them. Now that does not get replaced by this act. You are not freed up from that. You are only freed up from the requirement of maintaining separate and overlapping registers. Okay.